So the day is here and the Book of Boba Fett Chapter 7, the finale, has released. In this episode called In the Name of Honor, we got a look at the reuniting of Din and Grogu and also the supposed death of Cad Bane, although I don't think he's dead, and there's some pretty good evidence to back that up. So let's break down everything that went down in the episode and how it connects to the Star Wars books, comics, TV shows and games. As always with these videos, remember to leave your episode rating out of 10 in the comments and subscribe for a whole lot more Book of Boba Fett content throughout the show. So the episode begins right off with Boba Fett and Fennec arriving at the horrific ruins of the Sanctuary bombing from the last episode. Once there, Mando arrives on the scene much quicker than expected and tells Boba that he has recruited Cobb Vanth and his men, but they require protection in return and an agreement that no spice be run through Freetown. Fennec is appalled by this as that orange powder is worth so many credits, but Boba thinks spice running needs to stop. As we know from the comics and the books, spice can be used for both good and the bad, with medical uses but also used in drug production. Moving back to the Pyke Syndicate headquarters, we see the renowned and feared bounty hunter himself, Cad Bane. Cad Bane was a major player throughout the Clone Wars and a known Jedi killer. He took on missions to assassinate high-ranking senators, steal Jedi holocrons directly from the temple, and even once duelled Obi-Wan Kenobi with a lightsaber. He was even good friends with Jango Fett, the father of Boba, before his death. Inside, we finally find out where the mayor has been all of this time, and it's clear he's in bed with the Pykes. After this, the Pyke boss also confirms a long-standing fan theory from the beginning of the series that the Pykes were the ones behind the slaughter of the Tusken Raiders. Cad Bane though is concerned that Boba might find out about this and is even shocked himself that the Pykes were so cunning and ruthless. And coming from the Clone Wars, he's right to be shocked. They were pretty much nothing but puppets during the Clone Wars. We also then find out that the mayor is kind of being strung along by the Pykes, being dragged into more than he bargained for. He's definitely not a good guy in this situation, but I don't think he wanted things to take this dark of a turn. In Cad Bane's final line with the Pyke boss, the boss mentions that Boba Fett's Gotra is hiding out in the ruins of the Sanctuary. The term Gotra has actually been used before in Star Wars, given to the group known as the droid Gotra. This was a group of droids who fought for droid rights across the galaxy and staged attacks on biologicals at many major events. Cutting to the skies of Tatooine, we get an absolutely awesome shot of Luke Skywalker, or I should say just his X-Wing, jetting towards Pelimoto Station in Mos Eisley. Now the cool thing is that the pilot of the ship is actually Grogu with R2-D2, who has been sent back by Luke. This tells us right away that he has chosen the chainmail from Luke and was sent back to his father figure. As Grogu gets out of his ship, Peli hears his real name for the first time and calls it a terrible name. She says, "No way I'm calling you that," which is an obvious reference to many fans refusing to switch from Baby Yoda to Grogu. Fun little fourth wall joke there. Under Grogu's robe you can see the choice to pick the chainmail confirmed, giving him a whole lot more protection. Peli and the pit droids, first seen in The Phantom Menace, then feed Grogu some worm-like creatures, getting him ready for what's about to come. Back at the ruins, Fennec gives a rundown of the situation with the mods patrolling the streets, Chrysanthemum protecting the front of the mayor's office, and the Gamorreans protecting the spaceport. Pretty ragtag team, but at least their heart is in it. After this, Boba Fett is alerted that there is a visitor waiting for him right outside. It is none other than Cad Bane himself, who he has horrible bad blood with from the end of the Clone Wars. In an unfinished episode, Boba stages a mutiny against Cad Bane because he treated their captives atrociously and then got into a Western standoff with him, bringing the tension to a boiling point. The result of that classic standoff was Boba Fett firing his blaster into Cad Bane's head and Cad hitting Boba's helmet, giving him the infamous dent which you can see in his helmet now. In this scene on the streets of Mos Espa, Boba references his gutless and murderous conduct multiple times. During their confrontation, Cad Bane let slip that the Pykes were behind the murder of his Tusken family, deeply enraging Fett. He also drops the same quackter calling the stifling slimy line that Boba used back in The Mandalorian Season 2 Episode 8. Pretty cool little callback and a nice little Easter egg. Now this time though, Boba has softened with his age, or as some would say, he's much wiser. But he refuses to take the same fight twice. He will not repeat that fabled showdown from the end of the Clone Wars ever again, or at least, not yet. Following this, something deeply horrifying happens to Boba. The other families of Mos Espa have turned on him and now it's an all-out war with Boba against literally everyone else. The Gamorreans are sadly pushed over the Mos Espa ledge, Black Chrysanthemum is completely piled on by the Trandoshans, and the mod gang are purely overwhelmed. Luckily for them, Fennec arrives to rescue the mods before it's too late. Back at the ruins, the Pykes themselves finally arrive and Boba actually drops the name Cad Bane for the first time in the series. Everyone knew it was him and it was confirmed in the last episode guide, but it's nice to have the name set on the big screen. As things get dire, Mando pledges his creed to stay with Boba to the end, even if that means dying together alone in the sanctuary for their people. The Major Domo, however, has another idea. But before he gets to that, he mentions that he was educated on Coruscant, explaining his accent. In Star Wars, most Twi'leks live on Ryloth for their whole lives, keeping their native Ryloth accent, which in the real world is just a French accent. The Major Domo, however, shattered it during his time in the core world of Coruscant, similar to how Hera did in Star Wars Rebels. Moving outside into the open street, the Major Domo mentions the Obadiah High Council. Now, for those of you who haven't watched the Clone Wars, Obadiah is the homeworld of the Pykes and their syndicate, and the High Council there rules over all of their crime. Ahsoka Tano and her friends actually get imprisoned there in the Clone Wars Season 7. The Major Domo actually also mentions the fabled obsidian cliffs of Obadiah, which we do get a look at in the Clone Wars Season 7 also. As the Major Domo continues reading the terms of surrender, he soon realizes that there are none. Boba Fett refuses to hand over anything to the Pykes and will never back down. He also says, "Let's dispense with the pleasantries," which is a cool little throwback to Darth Vader's line in Return of the Jedi. The Major Domo is just about to get executed for these horrendous terms, but finally Boba shows some force and jetpacks out with Mando, slaughtering the Pykes from the sky. Really nice to finally see Boba get some major action and actually fire his blaster for the first time in the series. In the firefight on the ground, Boba also uses a knee rocket like he did in the Mando Season 2. These surprisingly come from a pretty obscure visual dictionary which outlined Boba Fett's equipment. Beaten down and on the verge of defeat, the people of Freetown finally arrive to save Mando and Boba's lives. Along with them, Black Chrysanthemum and the mods make it back, but Black Chrysanthemum is gravely injured. In a heartwarming display, Boba puts his own life at risk to save the Wookiee and offers him a nice little soak in the back to tank later. Now after this, Boba's crew have some real big problems. A couple of Scorpion-neck Annihilator droids arrive and they have some shields around them, just like the Clone Wars era droidicas did. These are actually a very deep lore connection from Star Wars Legends, and they first appeared in the New Essential Guide to Droids. They're pretty cool, and it took a large number of clone troopers to take out even a single one. Unfortunately though, they were so expensive that less than 100 of them were ever created by the Separatists, so I wonder how the Pykes got their hands on these two. As things start getting dicey, Boba pulls out his rockets and tries to break their shields, but unfortunately that doesn't work. The rest of the crew run, and Din Djarin attempts to use the Darksaber to slice through the shield, but that doesn't seem to work either. Mando tells Boba that their energy weapons can't get through and their kinetic weapons have too much velocity. This was actually a lesson taught to us during the Clone Wars episode set on Onderon, where the Republic funded and trained insurgents to defeat the Separatists. These insurgents happen to be led by none other than Saw Gerrera, the man who went on to become an extremist in the Rebel Alliance, including Rogue One. Black Chrysanthemum then tries to penetrate the shields physically, but is repelled by the droid's quick reflexes. After this, Peli springs the surprise on Mando that Grogu is actually back. They share a touching moment, and Mando is pleased to see that the chainmail reached Grogu, giving him some much needed protection. He also force jumps towards Mando, making use of that training from Luke Skywalker. Now coming down from the palace, Boba Fett finally gets that beastly moment we've all been waiting for, riding into town on his monstrous Rancor. Fett manages to steer the Rancor into the droids and weaken the shields enough for Mando to get inside and shred them to pieces. A nice little connection to Star Wars Rebels and some other content is that the shields begin turning red as they weaken, just like they did in that show. In a heartwarming scene, Grogu manages to save Mando from certain impaling by the droid, giving enough time for Boba to ride in on his Rancor and completely split the savage droid in half. This sends a rain of fire and fury across the streets, but Grogu and Mando are saved. Unfortunately for Boba, the fight isn't over just yet. He and his Rancor go up against the remaining droid, and after a pretty tense struggle manage to come out on top. As the battle comes to a screeching halt, Cad Bane arrives in town. Boba tries to steer the Rancor in his direction, but Cad Bane uses a very interesting trick to keep him away. He uses the flamethrower from his stolen Mandalorian vambraces. This is a deep lore Easter egg, but basically Cad Bane equips himself with pretty much exclusively gear that counters Force users. He has breathing tubes to prevent Force chokes, he has Mandalorian vambraces designed by the Mandalorians specifically to counter Jedi, and even rocket boots to simulate Force jumping. Very deep cut and awesome to see him make use of his equipment. The two then get into another standoff, again referencing their duel at the end of the Clone Wars, with Boba Fett saying he's a boy no longer. In that standoff in the unfinished episode, Boba was just a young boy who only recently got his armor. After this, Cad Bane brutally knocks Boba to the ground and is about to execute him, mentioning that Boba tried to go straight edge but still has the bounty hunting blood of Jango Fett flowing through him. At this point, Boba turns the tables and slams Cad Bane to the ground, impaling him with his gaffy stick. As he's lying on the ground, you can see the cybernetic patch on his head that we see in the Bad Batch, which he was forced to install after Boba blasted him in the head in their showdown at the end of the Clone Wars. Yet again, another tie into that duel in the dying days of the war. Whether Cad Bane is dead or not is up for debate knowing Star Wars, but this would be a really tragic way for him to go. Plus we hear his vital sign sensors beeping, pointing to a survival. Now after this, we get another huge deep lore connection with Grogu using the ability known as Animal Bond to calm down the Rancor after it tried to kill Din Djarin. There are actually two versions of this Force ability, being the dark side version and the light side version. During the Clone Wars, Obi-Wan used the light side version on Ryloth, while Ezra Bridger used the dark side version in Star Wars Rebels, as well as Count Dooku when he tamed a Krayt Dragon using the dark side version. Because of Grogu's training with Luke, I'm assuming he used the light side version of Animal Bond. Back at the Pyke headquarters, Fennec went to work and assassinated everyone inside the room. The Pyke boss, the family heads, and she even left the mayor hanging by his long Ithorian neck. With the fighting now over, Boba roams the streets freely and hands Black Chrysanthemum a Melu run. These come from Star Wars Rebels and were the subject of a wild goose chase by Ezra and Zeb in the first season. Cutting back to the dark void of space, Grogu has finally taken up the astromech pod, which we all knew he would, and he enjoys the ride. There is also a post-credit scene with Cobb Vanth becoming a mod, but yeah, not much else. He will certainly be coming back and might even take over as the new mayor, leaving Freetown in the hands of the Weequay. So tell me what you thought of the episode down below, but yeah, give me your rating out of 10. So that is my full breakdown of Star Wars The Book of Boba Fett Chapter 7, the finale. Thanks so much for watching, really hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.